also luxury brands that have built digital assets online, whether it's websites or social media channels or blogs or magazines, how can they ensure that they are replicating the same level of service that they give in a store or offline, online? Justyna?
To me, that's really simple, and it goes back to the brand and knowing who you are, what you stand for, what your personality is, what are your business objectives, and being very strong on communicating those, not just on and offline marketing, but in your product development, business development, your sales, your export. If you have these covered, if you know what they are, if you know why you do what you do, you'll be fine, and you will be as good online as you're offline, because there'll be this driving vision, there'll be this vision that drives you. And there's another element, and it's making sure that you have the right people taking care of all these aspects. So you have digital marketing specialists who take care of online. Because if you got your designer to write your blog or build your website, they'll do a terrible job. But if you get your digital marketer to create your product, they won't do well either. So it's having the right people to do the right job, and all of them to know what the vision is, so that you drive coherent business forward.
Nicolas, do you want to add anything?
Yes, I think really to add, actually, because I agree with everything that Justyna is saying. In terms of the experience online, and again, we don't have e-commerce, but we're working on it. I think it's really the quality of the content is really important. The photography is key if you want to keep the level that our customers can see when they go to a store, when they see a product. We spend so much time developing products, making sure we hope that they're the right product with the right creative and the right quality, that when it translates online, really the best way to do that is photography. And that's number one. Number two, I think the process needs to be, when you go e-commerce, obviously that's really what we're talking about, the process needs to be extremely simple. So Amazon is the benchmark, seriously. If anybody wants to go online and do e-commerce, just go and do the same, try to do the same thing Amazon is doing, because they've been the benchmark for 15 years. If not more. And then the third thing for luxury brands, I think, and that's something that might not be obvious to think about, is the packaging. You send, especially when you send luxury products, you will send them in like everybody else, in a very standard brown box. You don't want it to attract any attention, obviously. But then when the customer receives the box and opens it, that particular moment is precious, and you want to make sure that that moment is really just a wow moment. So the packaging, I think at that point becomes really critical, because that's when you connect physically with that customer.
I think that's I think taking those values and sort of adding it to the process of purchasing from a brand is just so important. And like you say, when the box, you receive the box at the end of the day and you open it and it's just amazing and it just screams of the values of that brand. I mean, you really, you make your client really excited when that all works properly.
If I can add to that, there's a very interesting story. I was reading about Apple and what they do with the packaging. And if you notice, when you buy your new laptop, when you open it, it's not easy to open it. They make it so tight that there's this moment of suspense, and then the product reveals itself. So it's up to even that to have that experience, not just looking pretty, but the kinetics and kind of the movement of it as well.
That's really interesting, actually. I never think of that. Luxury brands are traditionally very exclusive and like to be exclusive and keep some exclusivity about them, which helps to make them be perceived as luxury. But how do we do that online, when online is just available to everybody? How do you ensure that your luxury brand is still exclusive, but open to everybody?
Well, the exclusivity is a concept. So that's, to answer directly your question, I think that's why a lot of luxury houses still today are not online. No, that's the simple answer. Because we're struggling to figure out how to do it, and hopefully to do it well, and to balance what it was coming back to the balancing act that many of us are in today. This is really the heart of the question. So I think it's about the experience. We like to tell stories. So we have products, and we always want to tell a story. So in fashion or in lifestyle, we start with every season. The timings are a bit different in lifestyle, obviously. But we tell a story, the input, the feel of the season, and then we like to tell a story. When we came out with our first collection of home fabrics and wallpaper with Designers Guild, there was a story about, we called the first collection and it was a story because it's the birth city of Lacroix, and there was a story around the designs. But that's what we want to do, and that's what we try to keep, that exclusivity when we go online, and because of the photography. So then there are more direct techniques. You can have only a certain amount of products online, or certain colors, or you can try to tweak your assortment to try to make it more exclusive. I don't believe in that, because I think the customer is very smart, and if you want to go online on e-commerce, it's the opportunity to show everything. So it's access. The price will differentiate also who can access it and who cannot. In our case, I've built an array of products which can be accessible to many, because I wanted our brand to reach to many, but with quality products, not with cheap products, but quality products. But I think it's an opportunity. It's more. But again, it's how you do it. It's the experience I was talking about before. It's the photography, the video. It's the way you approach it that makes it more exclusive. Because a lot of companies are not going to spend the time or the money. Because when you talk about budget, it's not just about buying an ad. It's about spending the money with photography. Good photography is very expensive. So that's where we put our budgets, and that's where we spend time, because we feel that that's going to create the world and show the world that we want to show.
Justyna?
Agreed. And it's about the story and the language you use, the language as in the words, and the language, visual language as well. And it's showing people what you believe, and grabbing attention of people who do the same about the world like you do. There's the aesthetics and the language. We work with a luxury interior design studio, and for them, there's no point, for example, on social media to say, hey, have a look at our latest project, which is worth £80 million, because that's not the point at all. So what we do for them, we talk about the Regency style features of the house, about the period properties, about the paneling. And we're very, very thoughtful when we do that. And then in terms of the visual language, we decided to make majority of content, photographic content, monochrome. So as soon as you go onto social media, on the blog, it's beautiful monochrome architecture interiors with pops of color when we focus on the detailing. And that way, when you see different fashion brands online, they never say, this is this, click there. They just show you, and you have to make a decision. They want you to come to them, and that's how they are accessible, because they give you the content, and you can click on the link, but at the same time they have this exclusivity, because a person has to believe they are the right person for the brand to click through to go to the site. So in some ways we vet ourselves valuable or worthwhile or not.
That's quite interesting, actually. It's very interesting. So let's look at trends for 2016. Digital marketing trends. From my perspective, I believe that, and as we've heard in this talk, brands are going to be putting more content out there, but I think the sort of content that is going to be generated is going to be less driven by brands and more driven by clients. So I've sort of read about a lot of campaigns that are coming up this year that brands have got their clients to take photographs of their products inside their homes all around the world, and they're using that content. So it's sort of client-generated content, which is really at the forefront of content creation. I'm about blogging, so I write, I create content, and so that's what I keep my eye on, and it's going to be very interesting to sort of see how that's going to develop. And also brands working with digital influencers like myself. When I work with a company, I'm never dictated as to what I write about. Creative freedom is totally up to me, and brand has to be brave to do that. They have to be very brave to do that, because they're open to my interpretation of the brand. So it's going to be very interesting to see what you two have to say about marketing trends for 2016, digital marketing. Justyna, do you want to start?
I think there will be there are three trends that I can identify very easily, and the first one is kind of comes from what you just mentioned, that brands will they their own publishers and they create their own brand online. They don't have to rely heavily initially on media writing about them, etc. They are the storytellers, so they will be using strongly social media, blogs, their own websites to say who they are and create that lifestyle about the brand. Secondly, I believe the demographics that are on social media will expand, because there might be a perception that it's only for young people, that it's for junior designers, etc. But from who we know and who we work with, we know that it's the junior, but then you have the managing directors there, you have high net worth individuals, you have people internationally who do use those platforms. And yes, if someone is a prince and has a lovely palace, they might not use their name and surname on Twitter, but they will be there. Interior designers might use Pinterest, and they're also kind of hidden accounts, but they will use Pinterest to source product, to show it then to the clients. And that leads me to the third trend, which is, I believe that social and digital will be used much more for business. It will become business tools, rather than just exposure tools that we have to do, but we don't kind of really know what we want to do with them. And you will have, already we have interior designers who use Pinterest very, very effectively to source products. LinkedIn is an excellent business platform as well. Twitter is fantastic for journalists to find news stories, and also for brands to be visible to journalists. And that's trend, I believe, will continue.
Nicolas, do you want to add anything?
Yes, well, there's not much to add to this. One of the things, again, which is interesting in our world is the majority of the purchasing power, again, in luxury brands, is 45 years and up. And they control good 70-80% of the purchasing power. So that's another part of our balancing act. It's exactly to what Justyna said, and what you're saying, the digital, we all think it's all about the younger generation. So I think that's going to definitely change as people get more familiar and more used to going on Instagram or on the social network, but as well because of all the other tools of online marketing, like the search engine, which people are using. So that's one. I think the other, exactly what you were saying, the other thing is, the mix between mixing your audience with yourself is definitely something that you see going. We see in fashion the changes with the bloggers has been unbelievable, and now you saw one of the last campaigns from Louis Vuitton where they're using an avatar from a video game. I mean, they've been really extremely ahead of the curve on many things, including this. And it's really been interesting to see how a brand like this, who's at the moment is trying to elevate themselves, because they felt years ago that they went down a little bit in terms of image, is using the new technology to do that. The last thing as trends, which I don't know if it's a trend, but for a company like ours, or in general in fashion and lifestyle, is the purchasing behavior. I think we're all scratching our heads today, because at the end it all comes down, obviously, to building and maintaining your brand, but also to generating some sales. Is how are people buying? We hear a lot about omni-channel between retail and online. So today, I think nobody really has the answer. We're all scratching our head. We have a lot of new technology that's out there that's really phenomenal to track how people relate between your website. And I'm not talking about us, we don't have it yet, but we're looking into that. Between your websites, how they look at your social media, how they look at your stores, and how that translates. I think the trend of the digital as a driver of purchasing decision is strong, and is going to get even stronger as we go along. So for us, at the end of the day, making that sale, it's becoming more and more important, because people are and we all do that. We're in a store and we're look. And in the US, it's unbelievable. I've seen it firsthand. People are on their smartphones. They look for a price for an item while they're in the store, and if the price, and we have it in our stores, if the price is better somewhere else, they'll ask for the better price. It's not in Europe yet. In the US, it's very, very common. So I think all those connections are going to be very, very important going forward.
And my last question, what advice would you give to brands who are thinking about using digital marketing more effectively, or maybe just starting using digital marketing? Where should they be investing their budget? And budget could be both money and time. Advertising, digital PR, content creation, which do you think is the most important to start with? And or what is the balance between the three of them? And how should brands start? Could we give people some advice here?
I think it's a very hard question because it depends on every single business. And I think if you had someone from outside our industry, a kind of PR agency like ours coming from outside, they will tell you, well, for interiors brand you need to do this and that. But for us being within the industry, if in front of me there are 5 furniture brands, they're still all different. So really you have to first look at what you do at the moment. Where are you? Where are you spending your money? What's working? What's not? Where you want to be? And really based on that, assess slowly what you should be doing. From experience working with luxury design brands, the first step is to establish who you are. So have the website which works, that has the story, and also a website which, when we mean a story, it's a story that Google can read. So it's very different to write for online than to write an article. And we would see London luxury interior designers who would have a website that doesn't say luxury interior design London because they just didn't think about the strategic side of the website. So have the website which works and works for your business from the SEO perspective. Have social media, but have the right ones. If you're a luxury furniture brand, maybe you don't have to be on Snapchat. So be very selective where you are as well. And once that's shaped, we would then advise, then you can do PR, because then you can rely on other people creating stories about you, which reflect the brand you have created. Because if you don't know what you stand for, and you want to do PR, people will come up with all sorts of stories that might be damaging to your business. So know who you are first, sort out content, digital marketing, open up to PR, and once you've done that, I think then you can do whatever you want. You can be very creative and very non-prescriptive, and you can just go crazy and think about what will make people stop and look at us and believe we're something different. And that's what I would suggest.
Nicolas?
Just to add on to what Justyna says, because again, I agree we should be running a business together. We agree on everything. I think if you're at point zero, and it's a new brand, so the first question, besides exactly what Justyna said about knowing who you are and really how to tell and which story, what you want to say, is do you choose, and you have a limited budget, let's say, do you choose to build a website and have the ability to really tell your story, but then how do you get traffic to the website? Or do you go on social media and you select which one you feel are most appropriate to you, and you go where the traffic is? Still, you still need to build it, but at least you go when you try to plug into an audience. So I think that's really the question I would ask myself. Even so, with our brand, the website was an obvious, situation, and it existed for many years because we have a brand name that's recognized, so people type it for various reasons. But it doesn't, but we still brought it to the digital because we feel also the way, the social media in our case, because it also depends whether you do branding only, as I said, or whether you do branding and e-commerce. Because if you're doing e-commerce, then probably I would put the money in search engine, in really building your website first, that it's well built for all the worms that are, in Google, as you said. But then from there, probably would spend the money really in trying to target, buy AdWords and see how that works and grow from there. If you don't have e-commerce, then you don't start with e-commerce, it's a whole different story, it's more about branding. So really the question is, what type of, again, it goes back to the content, what type of story you want to say. So it's really a trade-off between the website, I think, or at that point going social media. Just to get back on another thing, I think that Pinterest is a very underknown platform. It's not a social media platform. Pinterest is more of an information platform. It's where people go to plan their lives. You want to do a new kitchen, you go on Pinterest. First of all, it's a very female, women geared demographic. The demographic is, I think it's 90% women or 85%, so, which is really interesting. And so you go to plan your life. But now it's the merge of the buy button on Pinterest, which apparently is working quite well. So that's another way to go online, in a way, depending on your product, depending on your brand, and to be able to mix both. And I think that trend, to go back to trend, is going to really, so when you're starting from scratch, I think thinking about all those issues of who you are, what you want to say, how much money you have, e-commerce, no e-commerce, and then look at the tools that you have out there and the trend, and try to see the trend obviously.
And people will really know who you are because you've aligned what you're posting with who you are, and I think that's really, really important. And I think that's a good way to end today's session. We've got